Hey guys, Youngblood with you for your Should You Buy video on the new Drake Corsair. And if you're unfamiliar with this ship, it's a new kind of multi-role ship released by Drake that's available in concept sale now for $195 if you want to use cash only, otherwise known as War Bond, or if you want to use credits and melt some other ships, it's going to be $215. Now, they say that this is primarily an exploration ship, but it's also really meant to be able to do like reconnaissance and cargo and combat and delivery and extraction. And the reason for that is a couple things, partially based on the size, part of it's the design, part of it's the weaponry it brings along. It really is just a pretty well-rounded ship. It comes in at 55 meters long, 27 meters wide, and 31 meters tall, which makes it approximately Constellation-sized. It does come with asymmetric convertible wings, which they say is meant to be for adaptability to atmospheric conditions and various combat conditions. I don't know how much that's actually going to end up playing a factor or not, but what I see is that this ship has wings that fold straight up when it lands, which means that it is going to be a much easier ship to land on planet sides than some long ship, or if the wings didn't actually unfold, you're basically going to be able to deal with some of the rocks on planetary bodies a little bit easier. You have a crew of 4. You have the ability to carry 72 SCU of cargo. Now, where things get a little bit interesting for this ship is when we start talking about the weaponry it brings along. It has 8 size 3 missiles that are all kind of stored on the right wing. It has 4 nose-mounted weapons. They come with size 4s on gimbals, which means you can have 4 size 5 fixed weapons on the nose, which is a lot. You can have a 2 size 4 cannon mounts on the wing, so basically you bring along 2 more size 3 gimbal cannons, but those could obviously be size 4 if you want. There's a remote turret on top and back that's going to have 2 size 2 guns, which is probably going to be controlled by somebody in the cockpit. And then you have 2 manned turrets, one on the starboard and one on the port, that have 2 size 2 guns. That means that this ship has 12 total guns, where it has a possibility of half of those being sizes 5 and 4. That is a boatload of firepower on a ship like this, and especially at the price that we're looking at. I look at this and say, okay, I'm a little bit concerned about the amount of weaponry that it brings in addition to the other stuff that it actually has, because it says to me this is entirely possible of getting a nerf somewhere in the development cycle, and it makes me a little bit hesitant, because all in all, I think this ship offers a lot, maybe too much. In addition to that, interior, you have a full contingent of crew quarters, which means that you have a full kitchen, a full bathroom, which includes a toilet, which is going to make the Cutlass owners hopefully happy. You also have 3 private rooms in the kitchen area for the crew, with the captain's quarters that's actually separated up closer to the cockpit, meaning that the pilot could technically jump out and get into the cockpit faster than having to run halfway through the ship to get there. That's a really nice design decision, and it's also interesting to see that there's not a shared bunk room, there's 3 individual areas. As far as the cockpit itself, it does have another unique kind of Drake cockpit scenario where you have the pilot seat that sits up front, and instead of it raising up kind of like you see in the Cutlass, what happens is the co-pilot gets in behind the pilot and then kind of rotates underneath the pilot. Now, it makes me a little bit curious about a couple things there. One is, how well can the pilot actually get out of his seat if the co-pilot seat's not there? They found a way to work around that in the Cutlass, so I'm hoping they do the same thing in the Corsair. The other thing, though, is it doesn't really matter, because if you're in side-by-side seats, you're either not centered or you may end up losing some visibility from side to side. When you're top and bottom, you may end up having a little bit of lack of visibility up and down. So there could be a scenario where the pilot may not be able to see below them completely, which may mean there's a little bit of team play required there. I doubt it's enough to make a huge impact, but I bet there is some sort of experience there that you need to be cognizant of. In the back of the ship, you actually have a large ramp, which means that you can park a rover, or you can have the 72 SCU of cargo. They did say rover or cargo, but the rover doesn't look like it's going to take up that entire section. 72 SCU of cargo is a pretty good amount of space, so my gut says is that you can probably carry a little bit of cargo along with the rover, although the rovers are big enough where you're going to sacrifice a lot of that space, assuming you don't sacrifice all of it. Additionally, in here, you actually have what they're calling state-of-the-art scanning suites. Now, keep in mind, state-of-the-art is coming right out of the brochure. So when you start reading that, you got to take that with a grain of salt because that's an in-game company's sales pitch. Now, how does this actually compare to something like a Carrack or an Aquila or a Freelancer Dur? We don't really know. I can say pretty confidently, I bet it's going to be less capable than a Carrack. How does it compare to the Aquila? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, having this actually interior on the ship is interesting. I really like the fact that you're not sacrificing something like you have to on the Aquila to be able to do scanning. On the Aquila, you have to sacrifice the top turret for that scanning station. This doesn't do that. So it just kind of seems like internal scanning modules, which may mean that it's less competent, or maybe it doesn't. We just don't really know right now. And then as far as the components go, it's basically medium across the board. You've got medium jump and quantum drives. You've got medium armor, medium life support. And then you double up on a couple others, like you've got 2 medium power plants, 2 fuel intakes, and 2 quantum fuel intakes, and tanks, and then you also have 2 main thrusters as well as 12 fixed maneuvering thrusters. So when I look at that, 2 main thrusters, 12 fixed maneuvering, I don't see this ship as being particularly maneuverable. I don't see it being particularly fast. And nothing about the design of the ship really makes me think it's going to be either of them. We see how the Constellation handles today, and it does okay, but it's very drifty, it's kind of heavy, it takes its time accelerating, so I think there's going to be some concerns about the flight model with this ship. It may be controllable, but I certainly don't think it's going to be fast by any means, or agile by any means, which means you're going to really be relying on those turrets to help you out while you take your time getting your forward-facing weaponry up front. We say that you can get size 5s and size 4s on the forward-facing guns. That may not end up being the best plan of attack. If you start talking about scenarios to where you actually need to be able to hit smaller, faster targets, you may want the weapons on gimbals to give you a little bit more flexibility anyways, but again, a lot of that comes down to your preference and your control type. A lot of people using joystick are going to prefer the fixed anyways, as opposed to, a lot of people on mouse that are going to prefer the gimbal because they can really take advantage of it. So where this ship gets interesting is when you start talking about it versus like an Andromeda. Because the Andromeda is similarly priced, it's $225, and it is another multi-purpose ship that kind of crosses into the delivery / cargo / combat / exploration. It's just a multi-purpose ship, and I see a lot of kind of continuity between these two. That being said, the Corsair is cheaper. The Corsair has significantly better weapons. It carries less missiles, but it still has 8 size 3s, which are big and powerful. Now, the Corsair does not come with the snub fighter. So I think ultimately what you're probably going to get here is a significantly better fighting ship, maybe a better explorer, because the Andromeda doesn't actually have anything on it that really makes it an explorer outside of just range and maybe some upgrades that you can do to it, whereas you have the scanning suites that are on board the Corsair by default. Now, if you want to compare to the Aquila, the Corsair is significantly cheaper, and you don't end up needing to sacrifice that turret, though you still don't have the snub on board, which would be helpful in exploring. And both have similar crew sizes. So I kind of look at the Corsair and think to myself, this seems like what they wanted the Constellation to be initially. Although, again, I still have some concerns about what all this brings, because it does seem like it's going to be proficient at too many things. Meaning it's probably going to get toned down somewhere from a balance perspective, because how it looks on paper, it just looks too good. And maybe it's not. We'll get a Q&A post, next week, hopefully. And that should probably give us some more information. That'll kind of give us a little bit more clarity on what this ship's going to end up being. But I do have questions. So, should you buy this ship? If you don't really mind the risk of this thing maybe being toned down in a couple areas, I think yes. I think this is a really, really solid ship option. I think the price is a lot lower than I expected it to be. I always value versatility, and this can clearly do that. I think the design is impressive. I think Drake is that company in the lore that was supposed to be kind of the low-quality, just slapped-together type of ship. But when you start looking at what the new Cutlass is and what the Caterpillar turned out to be, and a lot of those assets are probably going to be reused, it may not look fancy, but it's going to look like a spaceship, and it's going to look very nice and well put together. I think overall, the design of this ship is very cool. It's different, and I think I have faith based on the kind of design catalog of Drake that this is going to be a nice ship to have in game. As far as who this is right for, I think honestly, I think this ship could be right for just about anybody. Again, I think those that are willing to accept that there may be some changes coming down the line at some point, but if you want to do piracy, this is a really good option for that, especially if you have some smaller fighters around. If you want to do cargo runs in fairly dangerous areas, I think this could do that. If you want to do exploration in areas that aren't necessarily known to be safe, I think this could easily get the job done there. Search and rescue, I think you've got the scanning ability plus some combat ability plus crew quarters. I mean, I think there's some value there. I think you could really kind of fit this ship into so many different roles that I think if you're just looking for a solid multi-purpose ship, I think this could get the job done really well. So I guess let's just stay tuned. I think it's a safe bet to go ahead and purchase if this is kind of the ship that's been speaking to you. But since there's not really any rush, I'd wait and get that Q&A article first to make sure you really feel good about what information is being presented, because they may kind of downplay their hand a little bit just to make sure that they're not overselling expectations again. So if you have questions about this or different thoughts, please let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I appreciate you guys watching. Stay tuned for more coming soon, and have yourselves a wonderful day. Take care.